What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am back with the discussion video that I promised a while back over Surge format. I have a few guests with me here for this video. They can go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
Yo.
Howdy.
So because they didn't want to tell you who they were, I'm joined by ChoiceSpecs, who was the rep of the PGL and one of our Silver Division finalists in the tournament. Also Megaoshawott and AAron2420, who were both quarterfinalists in the tournament. So thanks for joining me, guys. So basically the plan here for this video, like I said, it's going to be just a discussion over Surge format. It's a brand new format for the community, and these guys all had the opportunity to take part in the All-Star tournament that we had not too long ago, and hopefully they'll have some opinions here that they can share with us, share with you guys, share with me, so that we can all kind of learn something about the format and maybe see where it can go from here. So just to kick us off, the first question that we're going to talk about is pretty simple. What did you guys like about the format?
I guess I'll start off. I really enjoyed, just in general, being able to use a lot of mons that you don't normally get to put the spotlight on. Like, in my first Surge tournament, the one that you did over the summer, I was able to, like, kind of make Torterra shine. It was really fun.
Yeah. I've never seen a Torterra used in draft format, so, yep.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%. I really enjoyed using a lot of mons that I would have otherwise never gotten to use. For example, in my first two games, actually, I had Delphox with Z for my round 1 game, and then round 2 I switched to Z over. But in both of those games, Delphox put in so much work for me against both of my opponents. In fact, versus my first round bracket opponent being Visuali, I ended up getting, I think, like 6 kills with my Delphox because he put my Delphox right in the range of Salic with his Spiritomb, and I just revenged off his entire team. It was such a beautiful game with Delphox right there.
Yeah, see, one thing I really liked about it was being able to use something like Fracture, kind of like what you're saying, being able to use these low tier mons and see them really shine. It's a like little Fracture, man. Like it's just a baby Haxorus, and it put in the utmost work in my round 1 game against Illusion, and like being able to use something like Ambipom, which typically is thought of as being bad in regular draft format. But in the lower tiers, like it was able to do its job. Sure, it's not an amazing Pokemon, but it's still able to do a good job at what it's designed to do. So yeah, just being able to use kind of unique mons like that, I think is a pretty cool aspect of the format. But what do you think, Specs?
Yeah, I touch on that as well. I agree. I got to use a lot of things I would have never gotten to use before. I also like that I got to switch out a couple of things, for me anyways, all 4 or 5 rounds, I guess it was. I got to bring in things I had used in the past, so it was like an all-star lineup for me. I used things from NPA Season 2, 3, 4, and then PGL as well. So it was just cool to touch on things I've used in the past.
Yeah,
that's one tourney. For
sure, yeah. We get to use so many different mons. Like I was trying to count up in my head how many mons I used like throughout the course of the tournament, and it's a lot. Like I think it's well over 12 mons, I think, that were used throughout the whole tournament, and that's I mean that's almost, I guess if it were like a full draft, you know, then that would be about 11 or 12 mons anyways. But considering these were 8-mon drafts, if you were to like scale that up to like a full-size team, that's a lot of mons that we were able to use throughout the tournament, especially if you know were in the bracket for a long time. So yeah, being able to use a lot of mons definitely was a pretty cool aspect. I also personally liked, and I know not everyone's going to agree with this, so maybe we can talk about that a little bit. I kind of liked the idea of being able to counter team the person that we were playing in the next round. So basically how it worked, for those of you who aren't aware, is that the matchups were revealed, like the bracket matchups were revealed, I think starting like after the 2nd round or something, before we actually did our transactions for that round. So we were able to both know our opponent, or we were able to know our opponent before we made any draft picks in the middle rounds of the tournament. Which, you know, some people don't like that because then they're obviously getting counter teamed, but I don't know, I kind of like that. It added a lot of mind games to the whole situation, trying to, you know, bait your opponent into over preparing or over drafting for a certain threat, even when you don't plan to actually bring that or even pick up that threat. Like, for example, against King L5, when I was playing him, I drafted a Diggersby, or at least I picked it up, and didn't actually put it on my team, but I drafted it early just to force him to draft counters for Diggersby, and that ended up working out pretty well for me in that situation, because, you know, he had to pick up a couple mons, because otherwise he was kind of tossed by Diggersby. But what'd you guys think about that whole aspect?
That I think was honestly one of the only aspects I didn't really like, mainly because and it's purely for the fact that in my game versus David, I had sort of realized, like, towards, well, actually not even in that game, I guess towards the end of the draft in the round I played David, I had sort of realized that he was counter teaming me, and I had like one pick left, and it was, well, my last wheel left being third, end of third, beginning of fourth. And I was like, I could always counter team David, but at the same time, I think I'd much rather just stop anyone else from getting ChoiceSpecs, because like the one mod my team can't break. So I then just gave up counter teaming David. I feel like the entire round he counter teamed me, and I completely forgot to even look at his team when I was drafting mons. And it came at the very end of the draft. I was like, oh, what can I actually bring that would help versus David? So it wasn't exactly preferred, but that's purely because I'd completely forgotten about it.
I can say that I kind of liked it and didn't like it at the same time. I definitely did exactly as you were saying. I forget who I was facing, but I knew they had Conkelder, which did a lot of work to my team. So whenever we got to pick up new ones, I drafted a couple of psychics and things to distract him from Conkelder, and he ended up dropping it. And I was like, okay, perfect. And I didn't even have to bring the two things I've drafted either.
Yeah, I have to say, it was like, there were good aspects about it, and there were like kind of bad aspects about it at the same time. Like, it's cool to get the chance to kind of counter draft a certain person in specific, but at the same time, I feel like it's unfair. It's an unfair advantage. Like, it kind of takes away the randomness of the tournament style.
See, I kind of disagree that it's an unfair advantage, in the sense that you both know that you're playing each other, right? And
yeah.
I would say that, yeah, there's a little bit of an advantage for whoever goes second, or for whoever goes first, I guess. Whoever has the first overall pick and the last overall pick, that person would have a little bit of an advantage, I think. But I also think that the person who is second is able to, like I said, like kind of how I did with Diggersby, you know, that person is able to get into the head of whoever has the advantageous position, you know, and then that can force them to make a decision that is probably not the best for their team, considering what your actual plans are. So I don't know, like, I definitely understand where you guys are coming from, though. There's some downsides to it for sure, but I don't know, I try to look at it from that perspective and try to turn a disadvantage into an advantage.
Yeah,
but yeah, it had some cool sides. Like the mind games, like you said, they're pretty cool. Like being able to try to predict what they're gonna pick and kind of pick off like how you're gonna counter their team and stuff.
Yeah.
At the very least, it was definitely really interesting to try doing that, because I've never been in a tournament or draft where you knew your opponent's going in ahead of time, at the very least for your game one opponent. So that was definitely a really interesting aspect to try, but I don't think that I prefer that over just the randomness of playing my opponent. Though definitely for having to reveal the bracket, I do completely get why you did that, so it makes sense.
And I think also, like, the advantage and disadvantages that I talked about, I think it's whenever we were able to pick up 4 Pokemon in a certain round as opposed to picking up 2 in a certain round, I think there was definitely a significant difference in how big the advantage was. I think whenever it was 4 rounds of drafting, it was a lot harder to say that one person had an advantage over another, right? Because there's 4 mons that, in theory, they have to try to ultimately counter with whatever their last pick is. You know, if it's the first person of the 2 to pick, they're going to have the last overall pick in the snake draft. And you would think that would give them a big advantage, but they have a lot of mons they have to try to counter with just that one pick. And they don't even know if the opponent's going to keep all those mons that they drafted. So I think it balances out a little bit better for 4 rounds, but I'll definitely say that, yeah, knowing your opponent in, like, the last round, like versus Techno, having the, and I guess Specs would know this too, having the first pick when there's only 2 rounds of drafting and the last pick is definitely a very large advantage, I would say. Where were you in the draft for the silver, Specs?
For the last, I think, 2 matches, I was first.
Okay. So you, like, did you feel like you had a little bit of an advantage then? in that last round?
Yes and no. I definitely overlooked a couple things. I should have paid more attention, and I felt like I was, they were waiting on me, so I kind of quick picked and didn't realize Coco was there. I definitely should have grabbed it, but I did.
Oh. But yeah, the whole like knowing your opponent before the drafting, I don't really think that should be a standard part of Surge format. I think that, like Aaron was saying, that's more so something that we felt like we had to do just because we wanted to make the bracket public for you guys to be able to follow what's going on for the tournament. And if the bracket's public, there's no real way that we can keep that private from the battlers as well. So that was just a consequence of that. But yeah, I would say like in the future for Surge format, if there's other tournaments, leagues, or whatever, it would definitely be better if the matchups were private going into the drafting process. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic. We've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but maybe there's a little more you want to add. What types of strategies did you guys use in your drafting and transactions?
So my strategy. Oh, sorry. You can go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I was going to say, so my round 1 team, I drafted going into it knowing exactly what I was going to drop, being my Alolan Dugtrio and my Hakamoto, because I knew at the very least they were mons that even if I got sniped of, I wouldn't be overly mad if I had to keep them. But they were drafted specifically as expendable mons. It gave me a couple extra points, and then going in with an extra 10 points later on, I knew exactly what I was going to pick up. So then into round 2, I sort of just drafted what I was aiming to pick up, being Kabalion and Drampa. And in Silver Round, I realized, especially with the not only having 15 points instead of 10, which I realized after my first 2 picks, but also realizing that we had 4 rounds instead of 2, which I thought we had as well. I realized that I had, for my last 2 picks going in, a couple mons that my team was really struggling versus, being ChoiceSpecs, and 2 Zoroark could also do a lot with a Scarf, and I actually really like Zoroark on my team as well. So I decided that I was going to pick up those stuff, and then no one else could pick them up. And I felt like that actually benefited me a lot, because had I had to play ChoiceSpecs versus David, which might not have even been that bad versus his team as he doesn't have a water type, that would have been much more of a nightmare than playing David would have already been. So I think that actually really benefited me a lot.
Yeah, I had no strategy in the first couple rounds of the drafting. My strategy was to grab the best mon on the board and kind of build around those mons. And as I started to kind of get some things down, I could then start to plan around them. Because it's really, really difficult to plan when you don't know what you have. Because when you don't know what other people are going to pick for you. I had a middle pick, I think, in the draft, the first round. So I had no way to know who wasn't going to pick in front of me and what they were going to pick. So I decided to just get the best mon on the board with Flygon in my mind. So I got Flygon, and then I kind of built around Flygon with some support, and just kind of fill out some cores that I like, and go from there.
Yeah, I went in thinking, well, I just looked at what was available since we could do from I think 10 points and under first round.
Yeah.
And I saw a little Ninetales there, so I immediately grabbed that. Thought that was a steal. And then I immediately just started thinking, what can I abuse to set up under Aurora Veil? Just what mons I could draft that I could easily set up under Aurora Veil and take any hit, and then boost my speed and or attack and just take full advantage of Aurora Veil pretty much. And it worked out pretty well. I kept it the whole 5-6 battles.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like one of the big strategies that I used was my early picks in my first round. I made sure that they were mons that I would intend to keep throughout the whole tournament, which almost worked out. I did keep Gardevoir the whole time. Swampert was my other top pick, and I ended up swapping that out for a Seismitoad because of the Suicune matchup. But yeah, I feel like it was really important to spend those high point, or to spend your points on those higher value mons really wisely in the early rounds, just because those are mons that are good, and you don't necessarily want to spend your transactions trying to get rid of those mons later on when you have several other weaker mons on your draft that you're going to want to upgrade like almost certainly later on in the tournament. So yeah, I really think it's important to prioritize mons that you know are also effective against like the highest tier of mons as well.
Yeah, I think I kept three of mine from the
Three
very
of them. Wow.
first match all the way through.
That's impressive. Yeah, Gardevoir was the only one for me that stuck around the entire time. But I mean, Houndoom kind of did. It became a Mega Houndoom. I don't know if that really counts. But
Not really.
Not really? Okay, never mind.
Because one of them's an actual pick, the other one's a Houndoom.
I think Houndoom actually left my team randomly 1 week as well. I think it just had a horrible matchup, so I dropped it for the points. But yeah, and then like another strategy that I had, like for the first 2 rounds especially, because the way the tournament worked, everyone was guaranteed at least 2 games. So I knew that I would have to upgrade my team at least once, so I kind of kept that in mind. I think this is kind of like what AAron was saying. I kept that in mind with the mons that I picked in my the primary draft, what I started out with. For example, I had a Virizion on that team, which shares a speed tier with Cobalion, and just kind of based upon how the draft was going, I didn't really get a real steel type, so I had a Probopass, which doesn't really count. And yeah, so basically I made the decision pretty much very like in the middle of that round 1 draft that I was going to upgrade Virizion to Cobalion next round, so that I had a real steel type. So I kind of drafted with that in mind, and I felt like that helped ease the transition to the second round, which I really think that those first 2 rounds of drafting are the most important in the whole tournament. Being able to set up like a synergy on your draft that you'll be able to maintain throughout the course of the tournament, like certain typings that are easily upgradable, certain resistances that are easily upgradable, like Rotom into a Zapdos on my team eventually was something that I tried to do. Swampert, let's see, what was the other one I was thinking of? The thought escaped me there, but yeah, just being able to have mons that are easily upgradable into higher tier versions of that same role, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That's something that I think is a good strategy to have. And I know like some of the other guys too, they kind of took, I know like Techno did this especially. His strategy was to basically take the strongest mon he could, kind of like Osh. He tried to take just the strongest Pokemon that he could find, and basically pressure his opponents with those selections as well, since they would know that he is their upcoming opponent, and they'd be kind of forced to scramble to try to find counters to all those mons or whatever. So I don't know, that was a pretty cool strategy that I heard as well. But did you guys have any friends that had other strategies that you want to talk about?
Not really. I didn't really talk to a lot of people during the tournament about their drafts. I just sort of tried to keep winning and then telling Randy that he lucked everyone every round.
Yes, he did. You heard it here first.
I was gonna do something like what Joel was talking about, like trying to upgrade my team and like get some like weakness upgrading, and then I got 6-0'd my round 1 game, and I threw all that out the window. I was like, yeah, I gotta reset. Hit the reset button.
I think that's a good reason to reset. That's understandable.
Because I got dunked on by a Rabombi.
So speaking of mistakes, we can go ahead and transition into the next question here. So what mistakes besides getting 6-0'd by a Rabombi did you make throughout the tournament, and what would you have done differently?
I guess I'll start. For me, I guess my mistakes would be definitely the finals match, allowing Donphan to go down while he still had hazards around and hazard users around, and allowing Toxic Spikes and Stealth Rocks to get up whenever I IV'd or EV'd everything specifically to be able to take at least 1 hit, just barely. But being poisoned and Stealth Rocks up made me not to be able to take any of those hits from Coco, and yeah, and that was my biggest mistake, I guess, was letting Donphan go down, and then also not drafting Coco.
I think.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I would say I think my biggest mistake was not realizing when Jolt announced going into round 3 that there's gonna be 4 mons that we could pick up and 15 points instead of the usual 10 points and 2 picks. because it really threw me off actually, because I'd planned going into that round I was going to get Garbodor, Mega Altaria. I realized then I had 5 extra points and then I lacked a Dark type. And it definitely threw off my synergy a lot in terms of trying to just plan out my team, because I could have potentially even gotten just another Mega or even changed my team around more based upon knowing that I had 4 Mons. But knowing that I had 2 Mons, I sort of committed myself to getting Mega Altaria, Garbodor. And because of that, it threw off a lot of potential picks I could have made instead of that and kept some more points and maybe dropped some more Mons. Like Rotom-Mow was a Mon that I really wasn't that great at using. But at the same time, because I had to pick up Zoroark and Mega Altaria and I couldn't really afford to pick up anything else, I ended up having to keep it. So it definitely threw off my team a lot, I feel like. But I feel like besides just not reading what Jolt announced, otherwise, I don't really think there were any mistakes I made necessarily going into the tournament. A lot of my games were really close. Well, my round 1 game was really close. My round 2 game, I played perfectly. Round 3 was still close anyway. But regardless, though, I think that it was really just a matter of reading what Jolt announced.
It's a crazy concept,
My
really.
biggest mistake, as I said earlier.
Go ahead.
My biggest mistake, as I said earlier, was my only fairy resist was Magmortar, and I had a god-awful matchup versus my first round opponent. And so I got Covert on by Rabombi and 6-0'd.
Sometimes you just gotta bring it, man. Even if it's a horrible matchup, you gotta save yourself from the 6-0.
There was no way to bring it. He had a rock type, a ground type, a water type, and like it was so passive, and I didn't like it. It was, I had ways of beating Rabombi, sorta. He just found the one spot, the one mon he could exploit and set up on. Which was Miltank. Never drafting the thing again.
Yeah, I hate Miltank, man. I don't like that thing at all.
That's why you draft Licky Licky.
Or like Lickitung. It's cheaper.
Exactly.
I love Licky Licky.
No, like for me, I guess I don't know. Like I can't really complain too much about how the whole thing went for me, but the the first round, I guess, is where I know I could improve the most, just because there's a lot of mons that, like, I'm not too experienced with lower tiers, and I feel like it helps a lot to be experienced with lower tiers for the early rounds. And I drafted something like Virizion, which in theory is good. It has a nice speed tier, it has taunt, it has pretty decent stabs, but like it's kind of bad. Yeah. And I realized that because it like requires setup and to be a threat, and it's kind of hard to set up against most teams, it seems, with Virizion. So if I had to do it over, I probably wouldn't draft Virizion. I would have drafted like anything else. But yeah, otherwise, I don't know. That's kind of it for me, I guess.
I mean, that makes sense. You did end up making finals after all.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think Volcanion was also kind of a mistake. Volcanion. I mean, it matched up well against L5's team, but it just died anyway, so it's a bad Pokemon. Don't draft Volcanion, guys.
Yeah, it's such an unmon.
It's, yeah, man. It's, in theory, it's a really good idea. It's a good mon. It can do stuff. It's just walled by everything.
It needs to be in the right hands on the right team.
It sucks because like any bulky water walls it. That's the problem. It just doesn't beat bulky waters. And there's bulky waters on every draft. You have to be subtoxic, yeah, but that doesn't always work either. I don't know.
Oh, for sure.
So we are down to our final topic, and I'm going to kind of expand this question a little bit since we have a little bit of time here. So what would you guys change about the format in general? And then also the question that's here in front of you, is this something you would play again?
So I guess
I'll
go
first.
Change.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think what I would personally change is the very least, and I think I mentioned this in the server already, but I think personally, I would think it's better if you kept all the rounds in terms of how many mons you picked up and the points you got consistent, as at the very least, how many mons you picked up. I feel like the points definitely could change, I guess, because if you're going later in the draft, but overall, I think at the very least, if you did keep the mons you picked up consistent per round, that would be really good in my opinion, because if, let's say, for example, I know the entire draft I'm going to pick up 4 mons, then for the people who maybe just go in and just are trying to plan out what mons they're going to pick up, it's easier for them to know where to start. And I guess at the very least, if you take it on a route like I did to start off with and just draft based on knowing what you're going to drop at what round, I feel like that makes it a little bit easier knowing that at the very least. So I guess that would be my only thing, is knowing how many mons you're picking up each round ahead of time. And I guess that might have changed, of course, because we are testing the format a little bit more, but I think knowing that would help a lot ahead of time, in my opinion. And I think in terms of a format, if I would play it again or not, I'm not really sure. I personally am more of a fan of the higher tier stuff, but I think that this is the very least a nice experience. I think if I got a little bit more experience with lower tier, and I've been trying to do that as of recent, I would definitely consider picking it up. But I just don't really feel comfortable enough with low tier stuff right now to really want to play it again, at the very least at this level, because I feel like just getting thrown in the deep end with all these really high competitive players. And
Well, it was an all-star tournament, so
I mean, it definitely, I get that for sure. But just starting in the deep end, I think, well, it was a solid experience, and I made it a lot farther than I thought I would, considering I made it past first round brackets. But I don't think I would let me first. I don't think I would try going this far in again without having a little bit more experience at Surge. I might try a random Surge tournament here or there, but I wouldn't do another all-star until I've gotten some more practice.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing about like keeping the amount of mons you pick up each round consistent. Just because like having one round where you pick up 4 new mons, it's just, you know, you draft this one team and you want to keep this team going forward, but then you draft 4 new mons and, you know, this team that you had before is completely different. Like sometimes even the strategy changes. And I mean, obviously that helped in my case because I got 6-0 and I was able to kind of make some changes and amend the problems of my team. But I mean, in general, I feel like keeping it consistent is a good idea. But as far as if it's a format I play again, absolutely. I love this format. I love getting a chance to use these low tier mons that you don't get to see all the time.
And I can touch on the same thing. I agree with the point system. I think it should be same either number of mons or same amount of points we get or whatever for in between each round. I enjoyed the format a lot. I find it funny that the PGL had me rep them, which I was happy to do, and hopefully I made them proud. I came in second, not too bad. I was laughing whenever I got asked to join, just because of I just joined the NU Cup and came in last place.
Nice.
Because I'd never played NU before, ever, and so it was my first time using low tier, and I did awful. So this was a mixed bag going into it, having that fresh in my mind that I just did horrible with low tier mons, but I was able to grab things I'd used in the higher tiers first round, so it made up for it a little bit. But I really enjoyed the format, and I'd love to do it again. And yeah,
that's good feedback. Definitely, I kind of agree too with the whole like keeping it consistent between the rounds. Like a big reason why it was set up that way was that it kind of helps me see like how it all works, because I was actually playing in one of my tournaments for like the first time ever, and I was actually able to kind of feel like what you guys felt throughout the course of the tournament, just to see like what worked, what didn't. And yeah, there's definitely a significant difference between having the 4 transactions in a round versus having the 2 transactions versus having 10 points, 15 points, etc. There's definitely a significant difference in that, and I think, yeah, like I feel like it makes a lot of sense to do the 4 rounds of transactions, like 15 points or whatever. Like, I don't know if you guys agree, but I felt like it was a lot easier to make changes when you had the 4 transactions and the 15 points to work with. Like, what do you guys think was easier between the 2?
I think the 4 was definitely a lot easier.
I think 4 was overall easier. It's just kind of hard. It's really hard to plan ahead. With the points, just kind of mathing it out, yeah. I guess. But it's definitely a lot easier to make the necessary changes that you need to make to your team when you have the more opportunities to trade and make improvements.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily can say either one way was easier or not. I felt like the things I wanted cost too much, so I ended up just drafting the higher points, and then I just drafted other things just with the full intention of dropping them.
Right.
Things I didn't want to have to face, so I drafted them just so other people wouldn't have them, and then drop them immediately.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think that, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to keep it consistent. And like I personally felt like, yeah, the 4 rounds was definitely easier, just because you have more to work with. You have, you know, more mons you can pick up, and I feel like in terms of synergy, it's also just a lot easier to patch holes when you have more options to work with, you know, because sometimes you get sniped, right? And that's another thing. Sometimes you get sniped, and that might mean that now you have to scramble to pick up like 2 mons to fit, you know, 1 dual typing or whatever you were trying to pick up. Like, I don't know, this is a bad example, but if you were trying to get like Greninja or something, and that got taken from you, maybe you could get a water type and a dark type or something instead of that Greninja, and you have the extra space to be able to do that. I don't know, just a thought there. But yeah, then the other thing I wanted to talk about too, and see what you guys' opinions were on it, and we're going pretty long here, so I'll wrap this up soon. But did you guys think that, like, from round to round, that there were certain mons that were like too strong for that particular round of the format? Like, for example, Greninja at 12 points. Did you think that was too cheap for Greninja based upon what was available at that point?
For Surge format, I think 12-point Gren is too powerful.
Yeah.
I think having it that early is really, really broken. The other mon that I really felt like was ridiculously good was Primarina.
Mm-hmm.
Having 10-point Primarina is insane.
Yeah,
right,
Oh, I'll let you finish. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh, I was gonna say, going into round 1, knowing that Primarina was somehow almost made it to me until CJ sniped the pick before, I saw Primarina there, and not only was I shocked that it was even allowed in the first place, knowing everything else that was available, but also that it somehow made it to the 8th pick in the entire draft. I thought that was actually
people
really
sleep on it, man. People sleep on it.
It's by far the best mon that was allowed, in my opinion. There were some other mons that were decent, like Amoonguss, Swellow, even Pelipper if you want to go for like a low tier rain team, for example. But by far the best thing allowed was Primarina. Also, I guess I'm sure some people make the argument for low in Ninetales. Veil in a 10-point draft could be a little bit scary, I guess, especially with how a lot of the mons that are in 10 or 9 points are there because they're low speed tiers, but they're still really good wall breakers. So the fact to have Veil with that as well just makes it extremely hard to break through those sorts of teams. But I think besides those 2 mons, in terms of round 1, there wasn't really anything. And the only other mons I mentioned, I guess, were Gren and Zeraora. I think was also another really solid mon for early on, especially with its typing and its coverage pool. People sleep on it a lot, but I think for 14 points, knowing what else was around, Zeraora was easily one of the best mons by far.
Yeah, I can touch on that with the Alola Ninetales.
Yes, you can.
I definitely enjoyed grabbing that early on, and definitely enjoyed the Aurora Veil. It allowed me. I almost jokingly was going to change my name on Showdown from the choice specs to the weakness policy, because I ran so many Pokemon with weakness policy just because I could easily pull it off under Aurora Veil. And I definitely pulled it off, I think, twice with Komodo. And then obviously it having Overcoat was nice in the hail, not taking any damage. It was a lot of fun.
It seemed like the mons that were most valued there in that first round were the fast stealth rockers, because I don't know if you guys remember, but Aerodactyl and Lycanroc Dusk, both 10 points, both of them went in the top 3, I think, top 3 picks in both of our drafts. So,
I don't know if Aerodactyl made it to me. I was going to pick it.
Oh, yeah, it was gone very quickly. I think it went first in one of the drafts and second in the other, so yeah, like people seem to really value the fast rockers as opposed to putting as high a value on the fairies. Like, I was gonna draft Gardevoir #1 overall, like, no matter what. I assumed it was gonna get to me and it was gonna happen, but I know, like, fairies are so good, and having a good fairy early on, that's just a really good way to go. And I know several of us took that strategy. I don't remember what Osh picked #1, but I know 3 of us here picked a fairy to start us off. So that's, yeah.
I picked Bisharp.
Bisharp, yeah. That was your mistake.
Bad choice in hindsight.
I mean, yeah. Like, I can see why you thought Bisharp would be good, though, because it's 10 points, right? It's 10 points, and it's still just a really good mon. So in theory, could have been good, but it happens.
I'm kicking myself for not picking Primarina, though.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, it was there, and I passed on it.
Those fairies, man. You got to get those early fairies.
Yeah, I was
actually planning on fairy.
Oh. You really
I had this little for Clefairy as my fairy type.
That's insane.
This is why you lose to Rabambi.
I had to draft Togetic as my fairy, which is a fairy that I hate. I hate the entire evolution line with a passion. So I was really upset that I had to keep it as long as I did, purely because not only was I sniped a pre-marina by CJ, but the pick before CJ being Danza, he picked up Gardevoir, and that was my backup for pre-marina. So at that point, I was just, and not only that, but Rabambi was also picked up. So all the fairies that I was anticipating I'd actually want to get were gone. So I just went with the low tier fairy, and by that point, the only one I could even afford to pick up with my plan was Togetic. So I was really upset about that, but it did more than I anticipated to, but it still was an awful mon.
Yeah, Togetic's not exactly what I would call good. But,
not at all.
Not at all. All right, let's.
Clefairy.
It's not Clefairy. It's not much better than Clefairy.
Nope.
If I'm being honest, I would actually maybe draft Clefairy before Togetic, mainly because it's related to Clefable. But yeah, I don't know on that. But anyways, we should go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks for joining me, guys. Do you have anything else, very quickly, that you want to share before we're out of here?
Check out my channel.
Yeah, make sure to check out all these dudes. They're going to be linked down in the description below. Very cool guys. Cool content as well. You'll enjoy it. And anything else? All right. Well, I think we are done here then. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy. And be on the lookout, I guess, for more Surge events across the community. I know that the Stab League is hosting a Surge League, actually, as a part of their entity. I guess I'm not exactly sure how that works out. But so they're doing a little bit of Surge format stuff over there. Hopefully some more Surge events will pop up around the community. Maybe you can have your opportunity to take part in one of these as well. Maybe we can run another one or two in the TTM tournament server as well. I'll link that down below too for those of you who are not involved in that already. But yeah, I think we've gone on long enough. So thanks for watching, guys. Again, thanks for joining me, and we will see you all in the next one. Peace.